Let's take a look at a scene from Disney's latest animated film, Zootopia 2. Obviously, this film is not as stylized as something like KPop Demon Hunters or Spider-Verse, but from an animation standpoint, there's still a lot going on in this movie, and some of it is so subtle that we have to go frame by frame to look at it. Right out of the gate, here's a really cool detail. When Judy bounces into the room, she's actually going to hit the ground with both of her feet at the same time. Now, why on earth is this interesting? In animation, we have a principle called asymmetry, which means when you're animating a character, you don't want both sides of the body to be doing the same thing at the same time, because it just looks weird and unappealing. So animators will usually offset parts of the body to just make it look a little more visually interesting. Although, it seems to go against what we just established here. So does this mean it's bad animation? Absolutely not. Because every character in this movie is a different animal, they're going to have very subtle differences in the way that they move. And rabbits jump with both of their feet at the same time. So that is exactly what the animators are doing here. They even add this little bunny hop of her jumping again before she does this roll move into the living room we have here.
Please, you don't have to hurt him.
Hurt him? Snakes never hurt anyone.
Something that's incredibly underrated about Disney animated films is the way that the characters act. There's not a lot of stylized visuals to distract you, which means there's only one spot the audience is going to be looking, and it's at the characters. There's a common expression in animation that animators are actors, and it's true. For dialogue shots like this one, animators will usually film themselves performing the dialogue and then use that footage as reference. So if you think about it, animators have to be really good actors if they're going to be referencing their own footage. When actors are performing out a scene, the person who's not speaking is not just waiting for their line. They actually need to be present with the other person in the scene. So on a shot like this, where the character is not speaking and they're listening to somebody else, this is called a reaction shot. But these reaction shots are definitely not as easy as they look. Now, as I step through this shot, I might sound like a crazy person, but nothing in animation is there by accident. So first we have Judy looking in disbelief. Her eyes are wide, her hands are up, sort of in this defensive stance. Her shoulders are tucked above her chin, meaning she's got this tense look where she's defensive. The next thing that happens is her hands are going to drop as if to say, okay, maybe this is not as tense of a situation. Next, we have an expression change from when she's listening to this character talk. I can jump between these two keyframes and you can see it more vividly, but the way that we get to that second expression is really interesting. Check this out. So the first thing that moves is not her eyes or her hands or anything like that. It's actually her nose. Kind of indicates that her senses are ahead of her brain in the way that an animal would rely on their senses. So after her nose twitches, her eyelids are going to move down first, and then her eyebrows are going to also move down. But if you notice, they're also coming in a little bit as if her face is scrunching up as she's considering this new information. If it's hard to see, we can flip back and forth between the two poses. And now you can see much clearer that the eyebrows are coming in. Again, this is a deliberate choice by the animator. Humans are very good at reading subtle micro expressions on each other's faces, and these micro expressions that they're adding in makes these characters feel even more alive. One of the easiest ways to make it look like a character is thinking is to add little subtle eye darts, and you can see that they're doing that here.
Snakes never hurt anyone.
This one's even more subtle, but you can see that they are just shifting it a little bit to screen right. And now as she's processing this information, she's going to lower her arms even more and stand up straight a little bit. Again, we have the nose sniffing here as we go into this new expression. Now they've closed her mouth and her eyebrows are going to come down even more as she's sort of processing what's going on. Just to add some variety, they're throwing in a blink. And now we have a larger emotional change where we're going from this alert expression to something that's a little more concerned, a little softer. A good way to transition between these two is to add in a blink, and that's exactly what they do here. Now, obviously, we don't want her to look frozen, so we're adding something called keep alive, which are very subtle movements that make it feel like the character is both alive and listening. If we flip back and forth, you can see that the eyes and the eyebrows pretty much stay the same, but her mouth shape is moving, her arms are lowering even more, and she's also standing up just a little more straight. And it looks like even her shoulders are dropping down ever so slightly. And if we put it all together, we get a shot that looks like this. The character's concerned, she's ingesting information, maybe she's wrong, and all that for a shot where the character's not even speaking. When Disney animates a character speaking, here's some subtle things that they're doing that you might not notice. So the line in this shot is, "Holds the secret that will prove it."
Who's the secret that will prove it?
What the animators are not going to do is open the mouth for every single word, because it would look like this: holds the secret that will prove it. That looks really jarring and weird. Instead, they're going to select a few words to open the mouth fully and others to keep it a little more closed. A quick way you can figure out which word to open your mouth fully is to actually take your fist and put it underneath your chin and put your elbow on a table like this. You'll notice your jaw will actually push up on your head, and this looks really weird. But if you say the dialogue, holds the secret that will prove it, you can kind of see that the jaw is only opening on certain phrases. So that's what they're going to be doing here. Since this is an H phoneme, they're actually going to open the mouth just a little bit earlier before the dialogue. So it goes holds the secret. So the mouth opens. Okay, so here's the jaw open on holds. So holds the secret. They're also opening the jaw on the word secret. So when he says secret, that little it at the end. So we have here C, and then we have the R shape where it's pushed to the front of the mouth. And then on crit, that's when the jaw opens. And now the word that, again, we're gonna push that jaw down. But on the next word, will, we're not gonna open that jaw again. We're actually just gonna combine the two shapes. So it's only animating that will. So we have that will. So the word will is actually just this really subtle, open and close, will. And now for the word prove, because we have that hard P sound at the very beginning of the word, we'll have a more noticeable mouth shape for prove it. So the lips come forward for the P sound. We're gonna say prove, and we're gonna go into that O shape. So the mouth is making this sort of puckered expression, prove, and then a V. For the V sound, it's gonna bring that bottom lip up so that we have the V sound. Because this snake doesn't have any teeth, we're actually just tucking that lower lip underneath the top lip, and it sort of gives the same idea. Now you might think that the animators have to control all the individual points on the snake and that each little control needs to be moved for every single frame. Well, that's not always the case. At these larger studios, they have their own proprietary software. Software that is truly like the best animation software out there. When I was an intern at DreamWorks 10 years ago, I got to use their animation tool.
Katie, you come in with the bass.
And the way that I animated a shot with lip assignment was to use a pose library. What's really cool is you could select a phoneme and the mouth shapes and all of these individual controls will actually snap into a predetermined on-model phoneme expression. It makes doing dialogue shots like this one incredibly more simple, mostly because these animators are doing so much work in this shot around the lip assignment that is not something that they should be really concerned with, especially if they want to get the movie done on time. Another great reaction shot for Judy here, where we have her concerned expression from the last shot, where she's actually going to transition into more of a sympathetic expression. The way to do this here is they're moving the inner eyebrows up just a little bit here, dropping the ears down, obviously that's the bigger move, but they're adding in these little micro blinks. And once again, we're adding in these little subtle eye darts, just these little expression changes to make it look like the character is processing this new information.
And when I do, my family...
They're even doing it on these dialogue shots for Gary, where after his line is done, he actually has his own little subtle eye dart, as if to show he's also processing what he's saying. Now let's look at some subtle differences between two different snake characters from two different animation studios. Mr. Snake actually has his neck leading up higher on his head than Gary does. If we compare that to Zootopia, you can see that his neck is actually coming out of the bottom of his head, and he doesn't have this bend in the neck that we saw on Mr. Snake. But if the animators did this for Mr. Snake, he would be considered off-model. On-model and off-model are two different terms that are used to describe a character that looks like their intended designs. The bend in the neck here for Mr. Snake would be considered on-model because it looks like the designs that have been approved by the creative leads. So the bend in Mr. Snake's neck is incredibly important to his overall character design. Another difference between these two animated snakes is that Gary doesn't have any teeth besides his two fangs in the front. And they're really committing to this. If you step through, you can see that he has no visible teeth in his mouth aside from these giant fangs. If we compare that to the bad guys, because this film is a little bit more stylistically graphic than Zootopia, they're actually utilizing two different sets of teeth. One is the default where we have the fangs in the front, but the other is we have this human set of teeth come in. But I think they get away with it because the character is a lot more stylized. The treatment they're applying to this character is a lot more painterly, where the eyes are popping out a lot more than they would on a photorealistic model. So things like the sides of his eye and his eyebrows are going to be really contrasted against the rest of his face. Compared to Gary, which has a lot more complicated geometry going on around the eyes, and instead the way they're getting this expression to read is by his bright yellow eyes being contrasted against the blue of his body.
My family will finally be able to come home.
Honestly, I love to see snake characters in animated films because it really is just the animators flexing on their ability to make what is essentially just a long tube of a character just as expressive as any other character in the film. And then of course at the end of this really tender monologue,
Home.
let me know if there's any other scenes from this movie that you'd like me to take a look at. Like and share the video. You can hype it as well. And if you're new here, consider subscribing for more animation breakdowns just like this one. And let me know if there's any other animated film you want me to go frame by frame on. I love doing these, so tell me in the comments. Until next time, thank you for watching.